Bonjour à tous.
Morning, everybody, and thank you for being here this morning in person or in video. So we're happy to organize this roundtable. It was quite successful. Further discussion at noon. Will businesses restore social bonds? So we have Ariel Mendez, who's a professor at the Aix-Marseille University. So why don't we address this question today? You know, we'll have some difficult periods with the presidential elections and everything. Maybe businesses is a place where we will continue to live together and to exchange, to discuss together. So we're happy to welcome Catherine McGregor, Director General of NG, Daniel Ball from Alliance Fédérale, of course, Thierry Déo, the CEO of Meridian, and the Director General of Technique Énergie, Arnaud Piéton. So thank you to the four of you for being with us. I propose that we set the scene for this discussion. Thank you, Christophe. Will the question, businesses restore social bonds? So why this stake, this challenge? Today, a lot of studies talk about a society that's in crisis. Survey of shows that 12% of people over 14 are isolated, precarity, unemployment, single parents, physical disableness and everything. The youth are also concerned. 40% of the under 25 declare chronic solitude or loneliness, and creating social bond represents a major societal challenge. It has an impact on health, education, employment, but also on the production of wealth. Shown by Yann Algan, the economist. If you're interested, I suggest you consult his work. Now, we should be talking of crisis of social links in the plural form, social bonds. You must know that in social sciences, the social bond is a recurrent topic. Émile Durkheim worked on it in the 18th century, and today it's still at the heart of Serge Pogal's work, for example, sociologist. So what is a social bond? I'll try to define it. A social bond can be defined as a complete complex fabric of belonging and relationship that contribute to form a society with a group of individuals. And this bond has a double role: protecting, on who can you rely, and recognition, for whom do we have value. And they distinguish four different types of social bonds depending on recognition and the family relationships, professional friendship bonds, and the community bonds. According to the country, society are structured around dominating social bonds, even if the other relations exist. So to better understand the crisis of the social bond in society, we need to identify the dominating social bonds. In northern countries, social bonds are citizenship bonds. In Mediterranean countries, it's more the family where you find the bonds. In France, it's the professional bonds that dominate. So it means that the crisis of the social bonds in France places the businesses at the heart of the topic. So this, the title of this debate is very well chosen. So work has always played a major role for social integration. It shapes and participates in socialization. This role is shaken up by working, homework, for example. Development of social bonds is made potentially more difficult, but they are in competition with other places of socialization, like digital spaces, for example. We know the negative and positive sides to this. In this context, how can businesses recreate social bond? So they can't behave like Michelin Schneider anymore. You remember the formula of these businesses that manage the life of their workers from cradle to grave in the 21st century. Today, at the scale of a territory, the businesses are not alone to create social bond. There is the social bond is created by a multiplicity of actors, local authorities, associations, the state, and so businesses are not alone to generate social bonds. They are one stakeholder, one actor among others, not like the others, but but they're part of the ecosystem. So by just taking part in collaborative projects, associations, creating employment, supporting local employment, businesses contribute to the emergence of solidarities. And the Pact law encourages them in that sense. So to conclude, the foundations of businesses are multiplying. They engaged more than 16 billion euros in 2022 investments. With the project they finance, they participate to the restoration, the creation of social bonds. But it's not enough. Territories need to rely on a solid economic fabric with decision centers being anchored locally. So very important so that the businesses can recreate social bonds. So thank you, Ariel. So we have four major players or actors, entrepreneurs and business leaders, and they will talk about the recreation of social bonds. So first roundtable to have your vision, let's say take stock of the situation. So with you, Daniel Ball, do you think that the state today, the public actors play their role, assume their role, or do you have to step in as a support? No, it's clear it should be the first responsibility of the state, but for various reasons, it doesn't really play its role. The question is, will businesses recreate social bonds? I will say yes, they should, and I would go beyond that, and I say that businesses must be committed in favor of this endeavor. Some figures were given. Maybe I can mention two others. It's the feeling of the French people for the other. Sometimes there is a high level of confidence for businesses, a trust in the business. So it means that, but distrust the other. The business has a good trust capital, if I can say so. It wasn't the case 20 or 30 years ago. There's a very interesting evolution to that effect. The business now is legitimate today in the eyes of the French people to create social. When we talk about social bonds, you define the different notions that define the social bond. Well, it's very important to talk about the role the businesses have on their territories by creating jobs, but also with their contribution to the life of these territories and social cohesion. Businesses today, the companies, are a place where we find cohesion, living together, which we don't find that elsewhere in the country, unfortunately, but it's present in businesses, and businesses must generate common projects. Our responsibility as heads of companies to make sure that this common project is shared to the extent of creating the pride of belonging to the companies, and with the goal, simple goal, businesses must create value, and the more you create value in a business, in a company, the better you are, because performance is the first driver of businesses, and this creation of value enables us to share better afterwards. When you talk about the state, I feel like saying that the state today uses those businesses. It's a financial resource first of all, and businesses that are present on the territories. We saw that in the two last financial laws or decrees. They're not really well treated by the state compared to other people who have their revenues elsewhere. But there's a real issue here is the taxing of businesses, the taxing of labor. It's one element on which we need to work. So I insist on the living together, quote unquote, inside the businesses, and the answer we can bring to the question is to try to go further in what businesses can contribute with for their customers, for their workers, employees, but to all the actors of territories. Thierry Déo. the fact that we're asking businesses to play this role, if we go a century back, it wasn't the same. Today, if we go to North America with our MAGA friends, the idea that businesses should do something else than just mere profit is not obvious. Well, we have to set a difference between creating or recreating social bonds. Businesses have always created social bonds, even a few centuries behind. Social Security was invented by private businesses without the intervention of the state. So I think we also need to consider the social bonds at different levels. If we consider this through the eyes of Spinoza, it's the link that makes the difference, relationships that make the difference between life and death, because we're social animals in the end. It's the basic element, but it's not necessarily, quote unquote, the well living together or living together well. So businesses historically have always done this, played this role, but the recognition of this role, in France at least, was only made official with the PAC law, accepting or declaring that businesses can be socially or societally responsible. All the regulations in France already highlighted this, because we have a responsibility for the well-being of one's employees, and the mission of the business creates this bond. And if we're not aligned with this, well, it's difficult to remain in the social group. And the responsibility towards the outside is something that developed later in France after the PAC law, but the fact that you have corporate foundations and that businesses focus on the impact of their activity, whether environmental or social impact, that they are aware and responsible, and they try to have positive externalities from their activities. Whether it's on purpose or just accidental, it's compulsory for businesses today, because and this was highlighted. So there are a lot of other societies where it was already the case, outside of France. Paradox, well, it's a paradox, but U.S. companies, for example, had more philanthropic actions, more social actions through their foundations, much more than in France. But it's a positive dynamic, and I think we're gaining momentum, because the French, a lot of Europeans, and most of the world are going through a very fast transition. The social bond is affected by all the pressures we get, whether for the climate, the digital evolution, and this creates anxiety, for example, and distrust with people. But businesses today, in accepting their responsibility for the other, well, they invite everybody to be responsible for each other. And the businesses, when you think of the U.S., businesses have one responsibility to make profit, but does that change the scene of this? I don't know. So we can't imagine inside a company having good financial, operational performance without the bond aspect, because cohesion, mixity, inclusion, it's where the business will find the talents it needs to satisfy its customers and to ensure performance. I don't separate global performance of the business from that of its social responsibility. Catherine McGregor, a company like yours, is present in the French people's daily life, and it's impacted by the present debate. Thinking of the ecological transition, but the migration issue. Do you think you should take part to these public debates and commit yourself in? Well, insofar as we are talking about subjects we know, without trying to replace political people, businesses have a very important role to play. And maybe to react on what was said on the social bond, it's true that in your businesses, when you celebrate the departure of someone who spent 15 years in the company and is leaving, going on retirement. Well, very strong emotion. People are near in tears. They comment and they talk about the person as a member of the family, especially when they've lived abroad and had strong experience as expatriates. It's at that time that we realize that this social bond is not just words. It's or blah blah. It's a reality. Often the social bonds are fueled by difficulties, projects in common, successes, failures, and us as heads of company, we structure all this. We give a reason of being to the company, a strategy, a clear strategy. We make sure that the projects we implement are intelligent and accepted, and that benefit to our community. So all this we work on very hard, and it strikes me to see to what extent we experience that on an everyday basis, and I think it also gives us a great responsibility and makes us very strongly responsible as a business, to bring our voice in the debate. There is an economic logic in the business, but it's being rational. But this rationality can be taken into the public debate. So we do have a very important role to play. Talked about the responsibility as a corporation to honestly represent the society in which we live, and this responsibility, if we're critical. And if we still have work to do, we have a lot of levers. We put them in place. I'm talking about man-woman equality, for example, and we're very much committed to that. At NG, we're one of the companies that probably does the most to that effect, but we're at 33% of women as managers, but we make a lot of efforts, and when I look at other dimensions of inclusion, the social origins, for example, we're not there. We're still dragging behind. We are duplicating, repeating a certain model, an older model. We do a lot of apprenticeship, CFA, inclusive purposes. In CFA, we have about 250 people who are in the pre-apprenticeship process. So you have youth that are close to the labor market. The CFA is people who are far from the labor market, and we try to bring them back in. We do all that, but there's still a lot to do. And I think it's a great topic. I'm thinking about the internships from high school. Often it's the children of the collaborators that get the positions, but the children of our employees are not those who need to develop their network, understand what a business is all about. So we have to open our internships to those kids that don't have a network and don't have relationships. So there's still a lot to do, and at NG we're very much committed, and I think we have to set our standards higher because we have a role to play, hyper-positive role to play, and we need to use our business as a tool for the transformation of our societies. Last point, maybe, you talked about transformation. It's a very important element. In businesses, we know how to transform. That's what we do on an everyday basis. We have the methods, we have the social dialogue that's in place, we know how to explain, how to involve. It's something we do on an everyday basis because a company that doesn't transform itself just dies. So on AI, for example, which are really society issues, it's interesting to see how businesses try to turn this into a positive element. Trying to see the positive side to AI, and we see again the key role of the company that will have an impact on society, because the way it tackles these topics like AI, turn it into something more positive.
Catherine will talk about concrete examples in a minute, but I have another question to ask. You were talking about misinformation, fake news, your role in the field of AI, and global warming and whatnot. Now, according to you, you know that all this might lead to divides in society, mainly in France, when we're going to soon have elections, and there'll be more divides, perhaps divides in companies, in businesses. So what's the role of CEOs in this case, or leaders in companies? Well, let's look at facts. Well, CEOs and managers could be an illustration of what we try and fight for. For instance, the green transition, the energy mix, the renewables or no renewables, and the rest. If you look at things like the wind farms at sea, close to the island of Noirmoutier, that's electricity to 800,000 people in the region of Vendée in the west of France. Now, this is a project that was good for European economy, French economy, and also some local businesses in the region. With that, we've created 66 jobs on the Île-Dieu island. And of course, their business is very seasonal. In winter, nobody's there. So 66 jobs created there. And the profile of the island has changed. People will get there, will settle down, will have kids. There will be, who knows, perhaps schools. That's very tangible. And when you start inaugurating the project, well, there's no issue any longer. People no longer say, I'm against these wind farms. The project was hatched, and it was locally supported, massively supported. So, on the day the inauguration starts, you've got the head of the fisheries. You also have the mayor, of course, well, a woman in this case, the project manager, our management project, the head of the region, the local authority, and at the beginning, everybody knows that everybody was against the project, and then many, many years later, down the road, the project is good. It is good. It is massively supported by the population. And the reason is that we've invested time, resources, we've been listening to people. It's been tough, but we succeed. As always, I think, my point here is to say that usually if you look at national level, we look at things as if there were always contradictions. But when you do things locally in a tangible manner, as close as possible to the people down there, we can overcome the political barriers because it's something practical that we do. Okay, thank you very much. Arnaud Piéton. Now, we have polls, okay, that's good. We have the feelings of the French. And usually the employees say that the company is like a compass for people. They trust their companies compared to other organizations such as institutions or politicians. And now we'd like to take a different stance on that. Would you say that sometimes we've gone too far, perhaps? That is, when we look at the social engagement or corporate social responsibility, we have communities at all levels, all types of groups in companies that have been set up. I quite agree with you. And as was said before, the company is not here to replace the state. But since COVID, I think corporates have become a landmark for the employees and those who work for companies compared to other institutions, probably. At present, I think that we have this, all the digital tools that we have social media, they're not very social. We have telework, maybe that's good in terms of flexible working hours. I don't think there are only benefits though. And with telework, for instance, in social media, You know what happened? Well, these were like artificial relations between people, whereas if people work for companies, they work on the same project, something to build, I don't know, a wind farm or a company project. And in this case, the rest doesn't really matter. People of all colors, of all religions, political positions work together on the same project, the company project or any other project, or they work on innovation that has to be developed and delivered. Now, back to your question, I think, well, not necessarily in France, but perhaps this will apply in the US. I've lived there for a long while. There was a moment when it was all about extremes, and with the new administration, there's some type of retracing our steps type of movement. And at NG, we had groups of minority groups, sorry. There were the Afro-Americans, the Hispanics, and other subgroups. And we've seen a mushrooming of these groups to represent everybody, all these communities. But we'd created all these community groups in the company, and we decided to retrace our steps and take a little distance, because look at the number of very specific cases. You can't number them. Everybody is different from anybody else. And I think we'd gone too far. And that was going like against the interest of everybody, because we wanted to be together and live together. And we'd focused that much on the minority groups that we'd forgotten about the majority group. They were not saying anything. They thought they were represented, and they were not really represented. And therefore the questions were questions like, is it fair? Are the choices fair when we promote people in career developments? So we'd gone too far, I think. And, well, it's easier to do in the company because you are the manager, so you have the levers, as Catherine was saying. You are the one who can choose where you want to go, where you want the company to go. You could do things, undo things. Rather simple to fix the things that were going wrong. And we had to realize that we had gone too far. We had recreated these community groups in the company. We got rid of all that because we wanted to focus on the interest for everybody. Right, now we're going to talk about tangible things, very concrete examples. We'd like to see what we could do to recreate the social bonds. Now, Thierry Deo, you have a clear assignment that your company has with Daniel. You have a vision in your company. And what would you say about this? Are these just words, or has this really got any tangible impact on companies? Yeah, that's true. We have a purpose. We are a purpose-oriented company, and that's like the strategic project for the corporation, which means that you have to roll out the projects, you have to act. What you need is that you have to have a consistent compensation system. It covers the whole chain. We have a purpose. We have 3 pillars. The first pillar is people. That's P, that is inclusion. And what we've decided to do is that we work on climate, there's nature, and people. Well, that's quite simple. These are the 3 pillars of our purpose company. Now, if you look at the SDGs, we've chosen some of the SDGs that are key to us. And it really is visible in anything that we do. That is our compensation packages in the short term, the longer run, the incentives for all the employees that work for us. They're all very much engaged and committed. And we have clear operational objectives. When we invest in the company, when the company invests, rather, we have to check the impact of what we do in these 3 dimensions, the 3 pillars. First, we have to meet the objective. We have a trajectory that aims at net zero. That means an impact on capital expenditure, but also the way the company works. That is traveling, for instance. We cover 50 countries, that's where we operate, and we have to look at our carbon footprint at Meridiam, and the employees can track that as well. At the end of the day, I'll have to pay for the offsetting mechanisms, and that means we invest in we invest in social projects, we support associations that we choose and that the employees choose. So I'd say it's a virtuous circle that we're looking at, because the companies fully understand these social bonds, and it hives out outside of the company because they themselves are engaged and committed in topics like the environment, but also other topics. So this thing about inclusion in our company is gender balance, of course, and it's about social gender diversity. Contrarily to what you can see in the US, inclusion to me is something that means accepting otherness, not just to highlight how different people are and then have a mismatch of things that you can't really blend, to use the image, sorry for that. I mean, gender diversity is when people don't see that others are different because you accept all differences. Gender and ethnic diversity, it's not easy to do, but I think this is what we do rather easily at Meridian. It's easier because we have a group of 400, easier than with a group of 50,000 employees. And that's what we do. It's very tangible, as you can see. Now, when we prepared this panel discussion with the teams, they told me that the objective is not to preach either. The company shouldn't preach out of the limits of the company. It's something that's done in-house. We shouldn't talk too much about these things, should we? Well, to start with, I've got this engineering background, so the first thing we do is that we roll up our sleeves and do things. You can show that you've done things, and possibly you can talk about this later on. The problem is that lots of people talk, but they've not done much. And therefore, it's better to look at something tangible and evidence. That's why we measure our impacts. We're very demanding about this because the first thing is to do things, to act, and then you can talk about what you've done. But it's better to act and make things change rather than words. Words can be useful, though, because others will follow what you do, and we have impact reports that measure that. But okay, we shouldn't preach out, we should focus on action, that's what we say, because that's the best thing to do. It speaks better than words. Okay, Catherine, now 100,000 employees, that's a different scale altogether. And could you tell us more about the initiatives that you've developed to rebuild the social bonds, integration thanks to employment? You can tell us what you think about telework, and also the links that exist between people. Perhaps professions will change, positions will change. What's your mission then? Well, telework. I feel that we're all aligned. We might repeat what others have said. We can help you if you want to. Right. Social links, there's two words, social and links, or bonds. It means sharing time with others, spending a lot of time with others. And if you look at those who are the fresh outs that join companies, the only thing that they can do to really develop, professionally speaking, is not just to have the technical skills. It's based on behaviors, soft skills. Soft skills are the way people interact with others. What I'm going to say sounds really plain, but that's not something that you can be trained for. You can't use Teams to do that. I'm certain that with telework we've gone too far. I know, and industrial relations, employee-employer relations at NG, that's very important. With AI, it's going to be even worse, because if you only use Teams to work with others, you will see that for some positions and professions, you'll be working with agents. So the human interactions compared to what we do in general is something that will have to increase with AI, and we'll have to do this directly with others. And we've seen that a lot of technicians stop teleworking, and what they want now is relocation of the teams. The teams will be working together. Because to work with AI and on AI, you need to have more time and more links between people. It looks like it's counterintuitive, but that's a trend we've seen. So I believe in that, strongly believe in that. AI transformation, positive views on AI. And as far as inclusion is concerned, we have to make sure that we have the will in the company. We need to have policies that are clear, with objectives that are clear, measure progress. Now, back to what I was saying before, I'd say that naturally, if you look at people, they tend to reproduce who they are. So what we need is nurturing the social bonds, and it takes a lot of effort. It goes through communication, but also very strong-willed policies to go against what people would do naturally. That is, people tend to recruit those who look like you, the ones who've been at the same university or business school, that have the same background, and that's a machine that reproduces more of the same. More of the same is not good, is not what we want, because we have this responsibility, you see. So many objectives on the CFA for apprentices, training apprentices in these CFA centres. That's very important, apprenticeship, and all that we do with professional schools as well. In these professional schools, we know that we have the future technicians whom we'll need, of course, in the future, because we want our company to grow. And it's a way also to give guidance to these younger generations so that they know more about companies, they're acquainted with companies, they get internships and whatnot. By the way, since we're talking about inclusion, let me tell you something. It's not really about competition. We work with other companies and corporates. By the way, we have a grouping of companies for a more inclusive economy. It's a group that was set up in 2018. We're one of the members. There's AXA and others. And we work on inclusion because we think that together we're mightier, we're stronger. That's very interesting because usually there's some type of competition between companies, but we can get together if we think in the same way. So this social bond is very important, and inclusive purchasing and procurement as well. That's an item on the procurement list that we track attentive, and with this group. And the objective is that we want to do more. We want to do more. It's difficult usually with the buyers and the purchasers, but in this case, we want to increase our spend. Our objective is to increase the total spend for these suppliers that are inclusive suppliers, for people with disabilities and the rest. It's so important, you see, because you will have to buy differently. If you continue and buy the way you did in the past, well, these are SMEs, and they'll be excluded from tendering, or they'll be smothered altogether because tendering is too big for them, and the small players cannot join in. So you have to create things differently. You have this buying machine, that is your company. You have to create a special space for these types of products and services. You'll have to be working with the small companies, with disabled people, for instance, that work on inclusion. And you will have to buy from these suppliers, the small suppliers. And here again, it means a different mindset. It means changing the processes, the procedures. And you can do this even better if you work with other companies. Right, you were talking about perhaps the responsibility of companies to recreate these bonds. We talked about telework and the impact on living together. There are impacts on companies. We've looked at, for instance, numbers for people who are saying they're bewildered, they're at a loss, and people who suffer on the job. So the question is, do you have any solutions against mental health for people who work for companies? Well, if you take things seriously, and by the way, at present we have very well structured programs. We train the managers. Sometimes the managers are not necessarily equipped. They can't detect the cases of mental health. Sometimes they think they don't have, they're not legitimate, or they think it's too personal. I shouldn't do anything. It's too personal. But we spend a lot of time at work, so we should detect these cases. And it's connected to telework. If you see that someone's not really good, but you're working with a screen, it's more difficult compared to those who can meet their colleagues at the coffee machine. So we detect the weak signals, and also we use HR teams and the rest. We have structured programs, we train people, we train the leaders. It's very important because the transformation is going faster and faster. So for some executives and leaders and employees and co-workers, transformation is a source of angst. People are not certain about what's going to happen next. And we have no transformation at risk. No Mind at Risk. These are two programs that we've developed at Engie so as to give the best guidance to the workforce and the managers. Daniel, Crédit Mutuel has a purpose as well as a company, so you're very committed. Tell us why, please. And also, there's this role that you're playing locally in the region where you operate, because you have to work with many local players and perhaps other initiatives you might have developed for the most underprivileged groups, and this battle that you won on the health questionnaire that people had to fill out to get a loan or mortgage. So we are a mutual group, and we had to go from a mutual group to action. We had, therefore, this special position, entreprise à mission, a company with a purpose. It's not just about communication, it's far from that. It's a tangible commitment or series of commitments, in-house, externally, vis-à-vis the clients, vis-à-vis the workforce, and also the directors, the board members. We have to make sure that the board members fully understand the decision-making processes. And today, our company is really at the heart of our business model. Any important decision that we make should be made on this basis, because we are a purpose-oriented company, entreprise à mission, and that's a tangible commitment. It's not just a commitment, but it's something that we check. Today we have a special committee, a purpose committee, and sometimes they ask more questions than the directors on the board. That's very important. And also there's an independent third body or company that checks every other year that we're compliant with our missions, and that's what we do every day. And also we feel that companies today are fully aligned on that. When I meet the top managers, I keep on telling them, make sure that you remember our purpose or purposes. We are an entreprise à mission, so never forget that. Today, it's a source of innovation, it's a source of transformation, as we said. It facilitates transformation because we say that our objective is to develop a world that's fairer and more lasting, so all the decisions that we make should go in this direction. As you were saying before, we made a number of commitments. We are committed. And for instance, we had a very iconic commitment vis-à-vis the third parties, which is what we do. So our commitment is the social dividend. We don't pay out any dividends. We don't have dividends. So we have this social dividend, you see, vis-à-vis our members and society at large. And each year we earmark 15% of the net earnings, consolidated net profit, as for this social dividend, 630 million euros for 2026. And with that, we can invest in companies that have impact projects, environmental impact and social impact. We don't expect any return. What we want is impact, which means that we do something good for our clients, as you were saying. And let me tell you more about this, because as you will see, it's essential. We're a retail bank, you see, and therefore we contribute to the financing of mortgages when people buy their homes or flats. And so if you take a mortgage or a loan, you need to be insured. You need to have an insurance policy in case you die. And there was a strong discrimination because there was a questionnaire on health and your health today, but also your history. So we had to fill out this questionnaire, the health questionnaire. You had to go and see your GP to get this document. We decided to no longer ask this question to our clients. And we've had these clients for a while. Usually they stay with us for 7 years. Well, we chose these ones, otherwise we couldn't have managed. And we were the forerunners. We were the first ones to do this. Today we're doing a lot better than the law, because there's a law that goes in the same direction. If it's 200,000 euros, but for us it's 500,000 euros. That is 1 million if you have a couple. and that really makes a difference. And there's a cost for the company, but we can assess the cost each year. Each year, when last year, for instance, and by the way, we've broadened this to the professionals, more than 25 million euros. It's included in the social dividend. And let me give you another example. For students, if we want to help students for underprivileged families, we have a special student loan, 0% mortgage, and if you want to support associations, what we tell associations, the small associations, mid-sized associations, we say, well, you will get all these services free of charge, and you will have also liability insurance because you are your own manager. And also, they're sponsoring more and more foundations. Today, we have a foundation with 65 million euros out of a total of 130 million euros for all the associations. Those are the numbers, and therefore we can do very important things that have an impact, because we do this for the long term, and these amounts are not minimal amounts, which means that we're a big player, and we work with associations, and with these associations we've set up this plan for underprivileged infants or children. We have the ideas, we're working with associations, they have the knowledge, and we create many links, and we then act, and we have a 17 million euro budget for 3 years.
So a major project to have a lot of people working together from different nationalities, different trades, different professions. Isn't it through work and the fruit that we manage to create this bond inside companies? Absolutely. I think that the idea of opposing businesses and financial performance of the business to a social bond, it's a bad idea. And you can't oppose those two. The idea of brotherhood, for example, fraternity, which is very French, it can't be collected, it's created. It's not, you don't ripe friendship. You know, we hear about the media of redistribution, taxes and things. It's part of the model. It's important to maintain this redistribution, but I'd like to insist on the fact that you can't oppose fraternity, social bonds and financial performance. We just heard about the foundation, the 600 million you invest. It's because you have good financial performance, then you can allocate this fund to social cohesion. So it's very important never to leave this behind you. Yes, at NG they did enormous global projects and everything, but we have tens of nationalities working together with different religions, with different food cultures, for example. They live together as expatriates, you know, far from their homes, and they all live together. They all share the same thing. For me, you know, the business is by essence social cohesion. It's entrepreneurship is social cohesion. Working together is creating social cohesion. There's in a nutshell, there's a silent value, and Catherine, you touched that is given by businesses, and this silent value is one, living together, one, accompanying people, learning, the learning process, apprenticeship, behavior, whatever the situation, you know, in meetings, during a dinner, during facing a crisis, for example. These are silent values that are often ignored or left aside. When I hear some people opposing businesses, financial success, and social cohesion, they're opposing these three elements. The worst you can do is to oppose these values. So Ariel, I think it's a time to sort of like bring all this together and conclude. So I don't know how long I have here. 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, not bad, not bad. So thank you to 4 speakers. I, of course, know a lot of things you've said. First of all, we can answer the question, will businesses create social bonds? I think, you know, businesses create social bonds anyways. We all agree on this. With what I said in the introduction, work is is inclusion, and it produces social bond. It's essential, and you've confirmed that. And work is businesses are major actors thanks to work, but not all work. Not all functions or activities. You can't oppose creation value and creation economic. You can create economic value and be an actor of social cohesion, be inclusive, but there's still a long way to go. There's still a long way to go again. And ladies and gentlemen, in your businesses, you still have work to do. I was sensitive to what you said. You know, when you have people leaving, going on retirement, for some, it's very difficult. It's sad, but you see here the solidarity of the business through this. You don't oppose the economy, the social aspects. And I heard something also very important. Businesses, men and women place their trust in businesses, in their company. As long as there's a project, you have to adhere to the project. We see how sensitive this aspect is. It's important, the reason of being, to know how to develop a corporate project and commit the people in this project. And the last thing I have noted, which is very strong with what Arnaud Pieton said on the U.S., a comment he made on the U.S. In the U.S. they have they see a company as a community. You talk about alterity, the otherness. The creation of social bond is recognizing the otherness. You have to step out of your comfort zone. And yesterday morning there were some youth workshops upstream from the actual debates of these economistes. So there were 200 youth and they were asked to make propositions for the presidential elections. And a lot of these people said to what extent it was difficult to join in the company when you don't have the codes, when you come from social backgrounds. You know, it's a you know, we talked about the internships and everything. You have to be. The company creates social links, social bonds, thanks to the recognition of otherness. Thank you very much. Thank you to the five of you. Thank you.